Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Henrietta Sui Leung, Director of the Government Liaison and the co-founder of the Hong Kong Gallery Association, and also the founder of Gallery Aurora. Thank you so much for the panel, for sharing, just the previous panel for session 4, for sharing their personal collection journey and expertise in the journey of collection, especially with a budget. I totally enjoy, I learned tips from professional point of view, personal tips, and learning about discipline and rules. And I now feel very inspired and encouraged to build a stronger collection with a budget. With session 4 rounded up by a panel discussion of the Art Symposium, we are honored to conclude the whole event with a keynote speech by Ms. Suhanya Raffel, Museum Director of M+. Suhanya leads and oversees all of the M+ programming activities, including collection, building, exhibition, research, programming, institutional collaborations, and operations. After joining the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority in 2016 as Executive Director of M+, she was appointed Museum Director of M+ in January 2019. Before coming to Hong Kong, Suhanya held positions at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, Sydney, as a Deputy Director. Previously at the Queensland Art Gallery, she was instrumental in building the Contemporary Asia-Pacific collection and led the Asia-Pacific Triennale of Contemporary Art. Today, Suhanya will be sharing with us the exciting plans of the M+ Museum, poised to unveil in 2020. The theme of her presentation, M+, the Power of Plus, Hong Kong, Asia, and the world. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Suhanya.
Yes, you can see from my title, it's No Mean Ambition. But it's important to actually say that that is great to be able to be doing that here, right now, and it's an honor, really, to be talking in this delivery phase of M+. So I'm also going to position the institution in terms of the region, but I will be using the collection firstly and importantly to give you a sense of what this collection looks like. And it's very few slides, but it's the beginnings to show you its form, its shape, and to illustrate how we are looking at the world and making our stories through the works of artists, architects, designers, and filmmakers. The collection also acts as a prompt for ideas and as a lens through which we can think about the context in which this museum is coming into being. Now, our collections date from the mid-20th century and on into the future, and we are very cogent of the fact of other public collections in Hong Kong, and it is vital for us that we add to the cultural infrastructure in our city. So to this end, our location here in Hong Kong shapes the collection, its texture, structure, content, and the roots of this collection. Its energy grows out of that rich visual culture of Hong Kong first, then into Asia and beyond. So what does Hong Kong look like when seen through some of the works from the M+ collection? This is not working. How do I move on my from my first slide? There we go. So I would like to begin this afternoon's talk with the work of Hong Kong artist Irene Cho, who is right here, I'm sure familiar to everybody, with a beautiful show here at the Asia Society and a group of works from the M.K. Lau collection at Duddles. And for me, it's great to see that we're re-looking at Irene, and I hope reassessing her position regarding the consistency of her vision and her place in history. Working in the medium of ink, of course, and with such controlled energy. For me, I wanted to put up this painting as a kind of emblematic way of using Irene's abstract eye to offer us a visual tool to enter into the M+ collection journey and to see how we work with the material cultures of Hong Kong. Two works here. The first by Holly Lee from The Great Pageant Show, and it is one, probably one of the most recognizable works by Lee, where portraiture, which is central to her practice, is manipulated. The model is an amalgamation of Queen Elizabeth II and a Miss Hong Kong beauty pageant winner, presented in front of a Qing court painting depicting an equestrian event in the Qianlong reign, and that painting was made by Giuseppe Castiglione, who was a Jesuit missionary in China in the 1700s, early 1700s. And next to it, we see a photograph made by Ni Haifeng. The subject being, of course, a fire hydrant, and the print of which he has graffitied with calligraphy, made a decade prior to Lee's work, and that these two works together give one a sense of the confluence of histories that touch on the period of a period of intense change. We have Gregg Gerard's photograph of Hong Kong. It shows us the city we know so well: urban landscape, vertical cities, crowded narrow streets, the quintessential image of Kowloon walled city. Captures far more than what it says. King of Kowloon, another major figure familiar to us all, who used the streets, walls, posters, footpaths, doorways as his canvas, covering them with his very own special ideogrammic calligraphic symbols, layers upon layers of mark-making. Now, much of King of Kowloon's work exists also as documentary images, and this time here we have the work of Stanley Wong, another mountain man, who also has a solo show at the Heritage Museum. Hong Kong wouldn't be Hong Kong without Cantopop. And this album cover, designed by Alan Chan for the diva Anita Mui, is symbol of the popular form's highest glories, with a fan base and live concert practice reaching mainland China, Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, South Korea, Japan, formed a very important base of song, performance, and sound for the great era of Hong Kong popular film culture as well. The plastic watermelon ball is attributed to the engineer turned industrialist Chiang Chen, who developed this two-color extrusion blow molding process to make a ball that is now so familiar. Chiang is said to have been inspired by the Yangtze River and its tributary, the Jiangling, whose colors always remain distinct in their confluence. From their iconic 1970s headquarters in Sanpo Kong, Star Industrial now produces over 600 items. The Red Air products, known for their quality, durability, and affordability, continues to be sold locally and internationally. Now, part of Red Air's success comes from a company's ability to adapt their product lines to the needs of their time and markets, particularly in developing countries. So not only are Red Air's products ubiquitous, many of their designers are now recognized as iconic examples of non-canonical design that represent Hong Kong's vernacular culture. The Hong Kong Red Taxi. This playful sculpture is a lopsided and skewered sculpture, and it inevitably draws the audience to think about perspective. It was placed in public locations in Hong Kong and Guangzhou, such as in taxi queues, parking lots, and on the waterfront. And Amy Cheung's sculpture really challenged perspectives of what is real. Now, another really important work in the collection by Holly Lee, called Bauhinia, 1997, that chooses to engage with the stylized Bauhinia flower, the emblem that appears on the flags and official seals of Hong Kong SAR, as well as various souvenir products available. at the time actually as well as now, continuing to use her distinct photographic language. The oil painting, and this is an oil painting, cracks that she has been developing on the image of Bauhinia flower is set against this typical Hong Kong skyline, commonly depicted in postcards and stamps. Made in the year of Hong Kong's handover, which marked that agreement of one country, two systems. Vic Menus, of course, this postcard captures Hong Kong, a city that is still one of the world's leading international financial centers with a free market economy. Wilson Share, these fine line drawings, iconic skyscrapers of Hong Kong skyline, the HSBC Bank, the Bank of China building, very institutions that are the engines of our city. Michael Wolff's photography, astonishing suite of photographs that we have in the collection that show Hong Kong's vertical towers that rise in clusters across our city and point really to one of the most densely populated cityscapes and cities in the world. And he also pictured the interiors, the population of 7.5 million, and the city's real estate market, as we all know, deals in the most expensive housing for the world. And also thinking about the living environment and conditions of living in such proximity. So in this tiny group of 15 slides is my kind of capturing of a sort of essence in our Hong Kong collections. But I also want to kind of telescope out now and think about the rise of Asia, which was touched on in the earlier panel discussion as well. And this is an image by Wang Fan. I want to begin just by thinking about what does Rise of Asia mean by quoting from a report that was published by McKinsey Global Institute in July this year. And the paper was titled, Asia's Future is Now. And I'll just quote the first 2 paragraphs. For years, Western observers and media have been talking about the rise of Asia in terms of its massive future potential. But the time has come for the rest of the world to update its thinking, because the future has arrived faster than expected. One of the most dramatic developments of the past 30 years has been Asia's soaring consumption and its integration into global flows of trade, capital, talent, and innovation. In the decades ahead, Asia's economies will go from participating in these flows to determining their shape and direction. Indeed, in many areas, from the internet to trade and luxury goods, they already are. The question now is no longer how quickly Asia will rise, it is how Asia will lead. So, Asia is on track to top 50% of global GDP by 2040, by which time it will drive 40% of the world's consumption, representing a real shift in the world's economic center of gravity. This model by MAD architects is a way of illustrating the innovative, experimental, spirited thinking that architecture brings and how we will envision our region and its possibilities. Consumption is now local instead of being solely exported to the West, which means less reliance on imports, and with more than half of the goods being traded now being within the Asia-Pacific region. It is an intra-regional exchange. In this video, this is a still from a video work called 75 Watt. The London-based artist-designers Revital Cohen and Tour Van Bellen worked with the choreographer Alexander Whitley to design a product whose only function is to choreograph its own manufacture. Produced in Zhongshan in Guangdong province by an assembly line of workers who had been specifically trained to perform this choreography, the object of the work reflects on mass production and the role of scientific management in mechanization, and in this case, the human body, in the name of efficiency. After studying and working in Japan for 10 years, Vo Trang Nha viewed his return to Vietnam to practice architecture as both an opportunity and a responsibility. The Wind and Water Bar was Nha's first project built purely out of bamboo, and he chose this material for its low cost, ecological value, its strength, and localness. It exemplifies the environmental and social agenda driving his work, which looks to reconnect human-built forms with nature and greenery. The sketches and model reveal how each bamboo structural unit is constructed and bundled to form this dome structure in a way that maximizes flexibility and the strength of the material. Jengogu sample rooms, perfect literal example of the known manufacturing base of China, the proliferation that we know as made in China. But with this production, not only has economic progress been rapid, so has urbanization, the growth of a huge middle class, and with a substantial disposable income base across the region. Urbanization in itself has also fueled an economic growth that has opened the doors to education, health, and wealth. In 1983, the then relatively unknown Zaha Hadid won the competition to design a leisure club atop of Hong Kong's Peak. One of her competition proposals one of the competition images from that proposal is illustrated here. The brief called for an extremely luxurious residential club that would provide dramatic views from its site on the Peak. Now, Hadid's proposed scheme was roughly divided into 4 stacks, sharply angular layers with a void in the middle of the club facilities, and it resulted in a formal and architectural vocabulary that was really jarring at the time. It beat over 500 other entries, earning praise from the jury. Now, the scheme remained unbuilt, but it helped to cement Iraqi-born, London-based Zaha Hadid's reputation at the forefront of her discipline. And Hadid, of course, has gone on to defy the limits of possibility in her work. And these were very early formal experimentations that proposed an entirely new language in architecture through a commission that was meant to happen here in Hong Kong. Woha from Singapore, I just put this up because I want to also talk about digital and digital innovation and the internet. Because as we move forward, we know that the digital internet and online world is a given in Asia. And today, this use accounts for half, which is 2.2 billion, of the world's internet users, with China and India accounting for 1/3 of that use between them. Now, the M+ collections reflects on the highly innovative use and application of the digital tool within the spheres of design and architecture and moving image. Younghae Chang Heavy Industries, they're a South Korean-based artist duo, who pioneered making art on the web as their sole platform for making their work. M+ acquired their entire catalogue of works, including those that they're yet to make into the future, which they will continue to add into our collection through a program of gifting. Now, there was much comment on this in the media when we announced this groundbreaking acquisition in August last year. Now, this is a suite of works that I put together to kind of set the scene in relation to our opening collections and factual analytics to give you the wider context in which M+ is being built. So let's zoom in into Kowloon. This is the King of Kowloon, beautiful, rare example of actually a collectible and a fragment. And you can see West Kowloon behind it. This is what the site looked like in 1991. You can see the typhoon shelter. This is what it looked like in 2017. A parcel of 40 hectares of land that was reclaimed during the building of the Western Harbour Tunnel and the Airport Expressway, with 23 hectares of open space. This is the master plan for West Kowloon Cultural District, on which M+ lives. Always worth revisiting and reminding ourselves of the incredible ambition of establishing one of the great, what's going to be one of the great cultural districts in the world. And I also think a lot about, when you make museums and cultural spaces, what is the connectivity? How are people going to come to us via NTR, ferries, the Airport Expressway, just round the corner from us? Because that site is one of the most connected sites in the world when you think about the opportunities of connectivity. It's, you can see our airport is one of the busiest in the world. But I also put the numbers over since 2019 compared to 2018, because we have seen a significant downturn in visitors coming. But it's still very high visitorships. And the harbour city, of course, as well. So you can see that connectivity is extraordinary for the city. It is much higher than any other city in the world in relation to railway, flying, and the ferries in the harbour city. What are the financials? Everybody always asks me. This is in the public domain, but I will always repeat it because it's fascinating fact. The background was an upfront endowment of $21.6 billion that was given over to the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority at the time. And at the time, it was understood that the retail and dining would provide the recurrent income to manage cultural institutions. In 2013, the government undertook to fund the integrated basement. And the integrated basement is a very important principle when Norman Foster did the master plan for West Kowloon. He put all of the transport infrastructure in the basement so that the ground level would be pedestrian. So that 23 hectares of open space, such a valuable, precious, important philosophical part of the district, is maintained as pedestrian. But it does mean that it's a very, very complex basement. In 2017, at the policy address, an enhanced financial arrangement was announced, because by then there were many of us who were on site saying no cultural institution, no museum is a profit-making venture. Up until then, I think there was a real lack of understanding of what it means to run major cultural museums and performing arts venues. And so the government announced the grant of development rights of the hotel, office, and residential portions of the district, and to use that income to fund West Kowloon. West Kowloon owns all of that land and those operate schemes, and the government will share in that eventually. This is a very, very unique model for cultural infrastructure in the world. There's nothing like this. So I want to show you a short video now. M+ is a new museum of visual culture in Hong Kong, currently under construction, ready for the public within a year and a half. This is an extraordinary opportunity, a piece of cultural infrastructure like no other in the world.
We've reached the top floor of the top of the building. It's an important first step towards that final opening push. And that gives us the opportunity really to make a change from being a construction project to a development and delivery project.
歡迎大家蒞臨 M+ 大樓今日嘅平頂儀式。呢個係 M+ 發展成為世界知名嘅現當代視覺文化博物館，以及世界頂尖文化機構一個非常重要嘅里程碑。
We could not decide on the name of the museum. Then we said a museum plus, which is so original. And today we are topping in this beautiful weather, and we look very much forward to the opening and be a premier museum in the Asia Pacific.
So this is the back.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that looks about right.
我哋今日嚟呢度 site visit 啦，嚟實地考察啦。咁因為其實我哋而家都 plan 緊呢一個開幕嘅展覽啦，想像咗個 gallery 好多年，對住個 gallery 個 plan 都好多年。咁所以其實今次嚟嘅時候係可以實質睇下真正喺 plan 同我哋想像同到實地，跟住我哋對個空間嘅感覺其實有冇咩一啲嘅出入啦。咁希望今次睇完之後可以對我哋嚟緊去 plan 嘅時候嗰個空間嘅設計啦更加準確咁樣咯。
It's always good to see the real spaces because we've been looking at the floor plan for almost 5 years. It's gigantic. We've got a lot of work to do.
清水石屎其實就係一個方嘅，要有一個見光嘅石屎，就係冇裝修嘅面嘅。我哋呢度有兩種嘅，一般就係要有板紋，另外一種就特別啲嘅係木紋石屎嚟嘅。
因為即使係要光滑啊，磨完之後 OK 啦，咁我哋先油浸板無油。唔常見呢個地盤第一次，我呢細仔都係第一次。
我會想完成呢份工作，等到第時我可以再行翻入嚟嗰陣時，睇翻我嘅成果。
The M+ facade building is so special because the facade are not typical material like the one we use in Hong Kong. Normally it's aluminium and glass. Our facade is a precast unit with a ceramic tile in a modular system, and it also serves as a sunshade to the office tower. Whereas the podium facade, it is an enclosed design to provide an optimum environment for the gallery.
The building that was developed actually became in two parts, the main building where the galleries are and the conservation storage facility. It is a building that will basically house the collection when it's not on display. It's also combined with the conservation laboratories, which are the areas where conservators, who are the doctors of the art, will be actually taking care of the physical care of the object.
This location on West Kowloon, facing Hong Kong Island, is the postcard view of Hong Kong. So for us to be making a museum on this site brings a whole other level of understanding about what Hong Kong is now delivering to the world and to Hong Kong. So that was filmed about a year ago, actually, or a little bit after a year ago, March last year. And we have totally topped out. We have closed in. We are now at that stage where the mechanical and engineering is being put in. And I just wanted to remind you that we are a new museum dedicated to collecting, exhibiting, and interpreting visual culture of the 20th and 21st centuries. We have an amazing institution designed by the Swiss architects Herzog and de Meuron, well known, I think, in the region because of Taikun, in our city, because of Taikun, of course, that they worked on, as well as the Beijing Olympic Stadium with Ai Weiwei. And have gone on to make other major institutions. We inherit much of the language that the Tate Modern has, because they worked on that institution as well. We are building one of the largest museums of modern and contemporary visual culture. It is of similar scale to Tate Modern with their Switch House expansion, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, the Pompidou Center in Paris. And we are 18 levels with 33 galleries, 3 cinemas, and a mediatheque. And we have on our facade that faces Hong Kong Island an embedded LED screen, which we will use as a programming space for making and working with artists and our collections. As I said in the beginning, it's our local historical balance that informs the way we build the context for M+ as a museum for Asia's 21st century. We are also a global museum, which is one of the most important things to say in relation to Hong Kong, because that is what we will add. And our Asian context and distinct voice is also what will be defining about the museum. Why are we relevant? People ask me, and I think it's because of how we look out at the world, how we learn about who we are, how we see the world, how we see ourselves, and how ideas are shared. And we think very hard about our voice. It's distinctive, it's knowledgeable, it's accessible. And we're always more than a building. And you can see when I come around to talking about the work that we have done up until we get our building, what that means. And it is about a relationship. I want to show you some renderings of the institution as it comes up. It's a very muscular design. It's very HDM, that concrete, fair-faced concrete. Our concrete workers on site are very proud that they now have a new skill. They call it art concrete as opposed to construction concrete. But it is a very generous and open space, and it has, for those who, when you come in, you will see how uplifting it is as an institutional space as well. Some of the internal spaces, so that you get to see quite formal white cube galleries, but also a very unusual suite of 3 bamboo-lined galleries for our collections as well. Now, I have to begin talking, if I'm going to talk about collection, I have to talk about our founding collection, which was a major gift of over 1,500 works by Uli Sig, the eminent Swiss collector, and that gift was made to us in 2012. The collection, this collection of works spans the decades of 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s. There's deep collections of 4 decades. Uli was one of the first non-Chinese to enter mainland China in the early 70s to establish a formal business partnership with Chinese counterparts, working at the time for the Swiss company Schindler Group, and he later returned as the Swiss ambassador to China and North Korea and Mongolia, and he returned in 1995. He currently serves on the advisory board for the China Development Bank. His passion for contemporary Chinese art and collecting began primarily as a means of getting to understand the culture in which he was living and working. However, he realized early on, while he was mixing with artists, visiting studios, seeing exhibitions, as they unfolded over that period of 4 decades, and they were seminal decades, that there was no institution in mainland China that was collecting this material. So he decided to focus his collection development to be systematic and researched, and one that he knew would be the kind of collection a national museum should have been making. And so he built this extensive, highly significant and coherent collection of contemporary Chinese art that has established for us in Plus a co-collection. It's a founding collection. Since that first gift, this is the number of our collections now, just over 6,000 objects and 38,000 archives. The archive collections are primarily architecture and some design, but also some artists' archives as well. And the map illustrates the reach of the collection. So of course we have very deep collections of Hong Kong. You can see 18% of the items and 28% of the archives, and from there we grow out. And how do we grow out? Very familiar, I think, for some. Tsang Kong-chi, who is a Hong Kong-born US artist, and this is one of a suite of works that were part of photographs made in the 80s. And he was part of the East Village art scene in New York. And this work is part of his series called East Meets West, where the project was that he would photograph himself in front of famous world monuments and tourist sites. It's a kind of way of inscribing himself into the world. We have Antony Gormley's Asian Field. This is a major undertaking by the British artist, whose epic work consists of 180,000 clay figures that were made during a number of workshops, and you can see the slide next to it, in Guangdong province. As much a social project as it is a work about public sculpture and authorship, this work is an example of how we collect major international global figures for M+. And it is this intersection between the international and Asia that drives and informs that primary collection development. Similarly, Frank Lloyd Wright's work that he did in Japan, designing furniture for the Imperial Hotel. Kuramata Sushi Bar. I have to talk about the Kuramata Sushi Bar, given how controversial it was. Now, design architecture, very important part of our collection, of course, and that cross-disciplinary approach is also unique to an institution of this scale in Asia. Key individuals, as well as major singular acquisitions, bring a focus to the collection, as this one does with the Japanese architect Shiro Kuramata. The acquisition of this entire sushi bar will be an anchor point for the collections as we prepare our museum for opening. Indeed, it will be the first work that we will install. Some other instances: Iranian artist Monia Fermion, best known for her work in reverse glass painting and mirror mosaic. Here, these are glass doors that she designed for her New York apartment, where she lived in exile for a number of years before returning to Tehran. And this ability to think about an artist and their multidisciplinary practice gives us a richness in the collection. Similarly, Li Mingwei, who works across installation and performance and brings into the museum this vital social engagement through the letter writing project, which invites people to write the unspoken. And if their messages, once written, are put into an envelope and addressed, then the museum is committed to posting them, establishing as social practice this expanded responsibility into the fabric of the museum. Indian artist Nalini Malani's proto-cinematic explorations of moving images seen through these kinetic installations of painted transparent cylinders. This is called Remembering Mad Meg. Australian artist Tracy Moffat also works with very cinematic vision, both in film and in photographs, that really nudge at the edges of ubiquitous media images of migration, displacement, refuge, and hope. The Palestinian London-based Mona Hatoum, whose sculpture here of iron rods reinforced in these, reinforced around these very fragile, hand-blown glass sculptures, moving suite of formal works about containment. And of course, the British Architectural Collective Archigrams Archive, a very important acquisition again. They taught many of our Hong Kong architects, and they've had a very influential role as theorists. And although they had never ever built a project as a collective, they were absolutely certain that they wanted to place their archive at M+, because they felt that if they had realized any architecture, it would be the city of Hong Kong, the walking city. Of course, we have already started to make deep loans of our collections into institutions across the world. And this is by way of saying the recognition of the collection's importance. We hold things that other museums don't yet have. And we've started to make that available across a number of institutions. So what is our role in society? And how have we developed ourselves in Hong Kong? We are more than a building, as I said. And so in the first few years, between 12 and 2016, we did 10 mobile exhibitions across Hong Kong as a way of introducing our intention, our interests, and our collections in 2016. The last one was from the Sig collection. One of the wonderful, joyous early works before West Kowloon became a construction site was the mobile exhibition Inflation, which looked at the idea of what makes contemporary sculpture, what makes public sculpture, what makes temporary sculpture. And it was a very challenging and engaging exhibition where many, many people had a lot to say about it. Neon signs, another exhibition, an online exhibition that's still there for those of you who want to see it, where we mapped neon across the city, but it was again, we were asking Hong Kongers, where is the best neon? And we had buses that went out at night to look at them. And so the city became our museum. Since we opened our pavilion in 2016 on West Kowloon, which is a tiny little laboratory space, we have opened 10 exhibitions, about to open next week, the Sig Prize, which is our first prize to recognize and support the work of artists, based on the Turner Prize, very similar to that, and comes out of the Contemporary Chinese Art Award that Uli supported for 20 years out of Beijing. And the shortlisted artists each get 100,000 Hong Kong, and the winner gets 500,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is very generous and very important for us to establish the fact that we value that relationship of making. Public programs. The museum, as we've also heard earlier today, it's so important, the role of education. We have summer camps, we have our M+ Rover, our design trust screenings, talks about developing an informed audience base in Hong Kong for museum going. This is, I know, is going to be a challenging but ongoing part of the work of all of our museums. And we're very active in that work already. Next year, in the year leading up to our opening towards the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, we will also start to fan out and talk about M+ internationally in forums across the world. Up to date, we have already reached over 1 million people with the work that we've been doing since the end of 2012, since 2013. But I just want to end with Aisha Khalid, and also whose work says West looks East. And I'm very well aware about, when speaking about opening a new museum, and a new museum of scale and ambition, I must also acknowledge the social situation in Hong Kong today and its unrest. And it is a fact that the eyes of the world are focused on Hong Kong as it looks east. And, you know, as we watch every day these events unfold across 6 months, long months of both peaceful and violent protest, there's no question that we are living in unsettled times. It is intense, and the emerging division, flux, and change is weekly, sometimes daily, hourly reality for us. And it makes for an emotionally exhausting reality. I am asked often by colleagues within the museum, in conversations with other arts and cultural community, by those I encounter when I travel overseas, what position should a museum take? And it is vital, I think, when I think about it, how the institution performs its civic responsibilities, that we are interested in our city and its relations in terms of its region and the world. And the practice of being civic involves being open. We need to consider how we maintain this position, that we are not driven by dogmas, that we are not instruments or instrumentalized, while always knowing that our collection offers a multiplicity of opinion. Indeed, the M+ collection works are brimming with insight. They invite us to reflect, to pause, to learn. And it is in the museum that we are able to see what artists have made over the past years as a means of providing intuitive perspective. Cultural objects are magnificent creative tools that unlock discursive, thought-provoking observation and wisdom. I'm going to talk over this while we show it. This is Samson Young's We Are the World. In 2017, the composer and artist Samson Young was commissioned by M+ to make a new work for Venice. And it was an exhibition called Songs for Disaster Relief. And he was thinking about this kind of failed utopian project of global disaster relief that hoped to fund change by releasing pop songs. In We Are the World, which you've just heard, Samson worked with the Hong Kong Federation of Trade Union Choir and asked them to vocalize this very familiar song, We Are the World. It's a kind of unlearning of what it means to sing, a new music technique where the voice whispers the song through its melody. Now, when I was looking at this work today, it kind of immediately suggested an international context. I mean, we are the world as well. And Hong Kong, in many ways, is on a fault line, and one feels that intensely locally, yet it has echoes beyond. And we see this situation mirrored in so many other places, in other cities across the world. And when we commissioned Shirley Tse to make Stakeholders Hong Kong and Venice, which opened in early May of this year, Her work, Negotiated Differences, is a very new work, and it was a commission for Venice, and it's a sculpture, it's a single sculpture made out of individual pieces of turned wood. And each piece is unique, often in shapes that are very recognizable everyday objects: a chair leg, a 10-pin, a baseball bat, a rolling pin, a candelabra. And each of these turned wood sculptures is connected to the other with using piping joints that have been made using 3D printing. Now, she used traditional Chinese furniture making technique of joinery, which means the sculpture uses no nails or pins or glue. So the work is all connected together through balance. It's a rhizomatic sculpture that weaves its way through the 3 different spaces of the Venice Pavilion, and the sculpture can never be viewed in its entirety from a single point. You need to walk through it and around it to see it. Should one section come undone, the work collapses and needs to be reassembled, and it is brought back into its hold through this balance. Negotiated Differences, it feels so apt, for our time right now, and none of us, including Shirley, even knew that when she was making it. So it is really this work of bringing together exceptional art, architecture, design, and moving images that makes M+ and our collection and the collection work in the museum so important. It is our plus. It is the power of that plus. And today, now, across the world more than ever, these functions of museums, our civic functions, are needed. And I feel even more committed to making a museum like this in Hong Kong, the first global museum of contemporary visual culture to be based in Asia of this scale. It is a place that I know where people slow down to reflect, to be challenged, to enjoy, to share, to bridge, to gather together. Museums belong to people, and it is in these spaces that we are provided with the affirmations of creative expression, of the art of artists, architects, designers, and makers. And they provide for us that really essential intellectual nourishment. Thank you.
Wow, that was very inspiring presentation. Thank you, Suhanya. Really fantastic. And I believe I can speak from all of us to say we can't wait for the opening of M+. It will be an amazing game changer, not just for Hong Kong, for the whole region, for the world, honestly. I mean, it's just amazing. I want to thank everyone who came to the symposium. This is the end of the symposium and the end of Hong Kong Art Week 2019. I would like to conclude it by sharing some statistics. Over the last 2 days, we had a very positive turnout despite the various difficulties, a physical turnout, and we had, which included a number of guests from overseas, our professional collectors, artists, curators, and everybody seeking to deepen their knowledge. Online, we had over 11,000 follower live stream views on average per session on the Zai Art app in China, so that's very encouraging too. Out of the 16 speakers and 4 moderators who presented at the symposium, we had representatives from Hong Kong, as well as the international art community from Japan, Singapore, and the US. Number aside, what is most inspiring is to see engaging and stimulating discourse between galleries, public institutions, non-profits, collectors, and academia within the art ecology, an often rare opportunity in the art field to come all together. I can't stress enough, and Suhanya touched on this, of course, how this dialogue is even more important during this time of great and disturbing polarization. We must keep talking to each other. I want to also just a quick overview. We started yesterday giving an overview of our city progress in terms of cultural growth in the midst of the booming art market. It is exciting to see such great potential, and we can all do our part in making it a sustainable and culturally diverse environment. And all this is, M+ will be, the crowning moment of all of this probably, and then there will be more coming, of course. This is the exciting part of being in Hong Kong, living in Hong Kong in this period of time. So much is happening. We learn about sustaining the creative economy beyond the gallery walls, and where blockchain technology, something I didn't know much about, I have to be honest, comes into the equation. Those are very exciting developments, and I'm sure there will be more in the future that we can share. This morning, we continue the conversation with a panel about art criticism in Hong Kong, looking at how a critical voice contributes to the local art ecology through various case studies. I think we have learned that writing and art criticism is very alive and well here in Hong Kong. It's wonderful to know that. The documentary presented Urban Dorothy was also inspiring and was a great introduction to our last session about art collecting within a budget. Something that sometimes art collecting can be intimidating. We only hear about the record prices, the big numbers, the costs selling for millions and millions. The reality, as Dr. Ip, 87-year-old, is still collecting, has shown, you can collect with passion, you can collect with a discerning eye. And it was interesting to hear very diverse voices, but I think what really was common among all the collectors on the panel was really this shared passion for collecting. Also the passion for sharing information and sort of building knowledge. And I think what was also very interesting from a gallery perspective is how they believe in the relationship, establishing long-term relationship with galleries. The association has over 50 members, so there is something for everyone, something for every pocket. So I encourage you to visit all the galleries whenever you have time and support us, and we'll support each other and the artists. And with that, I'd like to pass to Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. With the last 1.5 days, I think we learned a lot, and then we share a lot from different professionals, galleries, museum director, curator, art critics. So first, I must thank, Alice Mon. Alice, are you there? The executive director of the Asia Society Hong Kong Center. So with you have offered us such a beautiful venue to host the four times, the symposium. So I hope you continually give us the support. Yeah. The second, I must tell, okay, today you have a symposium, with collectors, but believe me, we now have 52 members, galleries, our members. And I believe, even though I don't say I know all the owners so well, but I believe we share one thing. We come to this field because we love art. We have the passion. And you know what we believe? We believe, the creativity, right? Individuality. And then, the freedom to express. And the most important, like today, another collector said, it's because the artist expressed inside, the emotion and sensibility, and that we have a dialogue and we feel it, and that's what we need. So, like yesterday, we have a Johnson. You remember he started gallery in the early 80s. I start in the early 90s. So, you see, we both witnessed the growth of a Hong Kong gallery. But Suhanya, at that time, we still have only one museum. But look at the last 10 years, the landscape have changed. We're now going to have the newly renovated Museum of Art. And I heard about so many big collectors give a further donation. So we have a beautiful collection for Museum of Art to see. And also, thanks to you, to give a proper introduction about M+. So we are so excited here for Hong Kong. Oh, I wish I can be younger. So, when I look at all the young faces, you are lucky. Because with the coming, 5 years, we have so many professionals in Hong Kong with to live up, the Hong Kong art scene, education, great exhibition, and the sharing. And then the most important after all, I would say thank to the audience, thank for the art lover, thank for the collector. And on behalf, the gallery, as a chair lady, I must say, I have to thank for the founding of this gallery association in 2012, you know, okay, the two founding member, Henrietta, you know, is here. The other Katie is flying to Miami, right? To do, you know, to promote, you know, his business. So Fabio and me is the fourth, you know, right? The chairperson. I hope, you know, we will, you know, try our best without the whole board members, you know, to lift, you know, the Gallery Association, you know, to a better association. And then we wish, you know, to collaborate with the more art institute in Hong Kong to, you know, enrich, you know, our staff with a better knowledge, ourselves also, and also, you know, our collectors. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
Just a final thank you to Jessica and Sophia, who are the engine of the association, and more than that, actually. Thank you very much. And of course to Willem, who worked on the symposium together with me. Thank you so much, Willem. Thanks.
So may I now invite, you know, our beloved partner, Alice Mong, Suhanya, our speaker, you know, board members to come over to have a group photo for our memory for the 4th, you know, symposium. Yes, please. Yes, also the speaker.
The speakers, moderator, everyone.
Yeah.
But not everyone.
Everyone, we have two screens.
Yeah, I know.